Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to the second part of our three-part series on Ready, Set, Advocate, our new advocacy toolkit. We are so excited to be here with you today to talk about setting the stage to build and tell your library's message and stories. So before we begin, though, let us tell you a little bit about us. As Tam already mentioned, my name is Kate Hall, and I'm here today with Joanna Bertucci, my co-presenter. I've been the executive director of the Northbrook Public Library and have worked in public libraries for over 20 years now. And I'm so passionate about advocating for libraries, and I can't wait to share with all of you here today how easy it can be to show your stakeholders the value your library brings to the table. This is something that I have had the chance to learn over the past 20 years. And so whether you're a new library director or more seasoned library staff member or a trustee, we hope that you'll gain a lot of insight today. But I am here today with my fabulous and wonderful co-presenter, Joanna Bertucci.
Thank you, Kate. That was a great setup. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanna Bertucci. I am in my 6th month as the director of the Park Ridge Public Library. Most recently, I was the operations manager at the River Forest Public Library. This is my first experience working on an ILA committee, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of this year's advocacy committee team. Living through the pandemic and the ongoing pandemic has brought to light that advocacy for libraries is more important now than ever. And I'm delighted to be here with you today. So now that Kate and I have introduced ourselves, let's get into today's program. So for all of you who attended last week's session with Keith Fields and Betsy Adamowski, their fantastic presentation of Module 1, this slide will look familiar to you. If you're joining us for the first time today, we're going to go over today's program. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to explain to you what exactly Ready, Set, Advocate is. So just for some background, this initiative was born out of ILA's commitment to provide advocacy training to library staff, trustees, friends groups, and other supporters. So as Kate said, anyone who is active, working, loves libraries can be a library advocate. Ready, Set, Advocate is a part of a 3-part program that gives you the tools you need to become a successful library advocate. Each module that's being presented live corresponds to a section in the ILA Advocacy Toolkit, which is available on ILA's website. And this training was developed based on best practices from other programs such as the American Library Association's Advocacy Bootcamp. So now I'm going to give you just a quick overview of the goals for each of the 3 modules. So last week, Keith and Betsy did a fantastic job setting up our advocacy training. They are our ILA advocacy experts with our first module called Ready. Keith talked about what advocacy means for libraries. He defined advocacy as action, engagement, and supporting a cause or a specific issue, putting forth a positive message and calling others to action. So that webinar was recorded and archived and is on ILA's website. So if you missed last week, you can tune in anytime to catch up on Module 1. So this afternoon, Kate and I are going to give you the tools to demonstrate your library's impact through data, the data that you're collecting and stories you're telling about how your users are benefiting from all the wonderful things that your library is doing, your programs, your services, your collections. And lastly, we're going to share with you the building blocks of creating an advocacy plan for our library. Next week, Nanette Donahue and Gail Graziani are going to bring it home, and they're going to give you the tools to create an everyday advocacy goal and to be able to put your advocacy plan into action in the Module 3 Advocate. And now that we have reviewed the modules, we're going to dig in to Module 2 Set.
So whether communicating with the public, with media, with library users, with community leaders or elected officials, it's important to communicate a clear, consistent, and concise message. It does not have to be alliterative, though. If you work at a library or serve on a library board, what's your library all about? How are you making a difference in your community and in people's lives? If you're a library user or library supporter, what makes the library important to you? When advocating, you need to distill your message down to one simple truth and then repeat it often. think about a song that you hear over and over again. I always remember Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba, which came out when I was in college, and I hated it. It was an awful song, but I heard it so often that soon I knew all of the words, and my brain was tricked into thinking I like it. Now, luckily, people already like libraries, so we don't have to contend with not liking something to start with, but we do need to do the repeat piece. And so in crafting a message, you need to think about something that you will repeat over and over and over again. Libraries Transform Lives is one of my favorites that you can see here on the screen, but you can see some other examples as well. These are pulled from ALA's advocacy toolkit, and you can also create your own. And we're going to show you how to do that just a little bit later on today. So at Northbrook, our core values are centered around inclusion, collaboration, and partnerships. So we created the tagline, "Where Community Happens," to demonstrate our role in the community and the importance we felt in creating a space where everyone in the community is welcome. We use that message in marketing campaigns, when presenting to different community groups, and even when talking to elected officials about how vital our library is in helping Northbrook thrive. So that's what we do. Joanna, what do you guys do at Park Ridge?
Yeah, so last week watching Keith and Betsy really resonated me about knowing your library's vision, mission, and strategic plan. So these are big picture ideas that drive priorities from your library. At my library, we have a brand new mission, vision, and strategic plan. So all of these plans and goals drive our priorities for funding, for staffing, for collection and programs. So at the Park Ridge Library, our vision defines who we are to the community. So we are a trusted resource and valued community partner that engages and strengthens its community by fostering personal growth in learning by providing opportunities to connect, inform, innovate, and grow. But at the local level, every library, whether you're academic, public, or school, are going to have your own messaging that applies to your specific library community.
I always like to say that all libraries are exactly the same and completely different. So absolutely.
So thinking about your library, each library is going to have its own message. So take a look at the questions on this slide. You may want to jot some things down as Kate and I are kind of going over these points, but your answers can help you craft your own message for your own library. As Kate said earlier, we want to keep our message concise and clear. And I think that we should demonstrate this in real time. What do you think, Kate?
I think let's do it.
Okay.
No pressure. We're
All
being
right.
recorded.
No pressure. Okay. Kate, what is unique and special about the Northbrook Public Library?
I know we only have an hour for this presentation, so I'm not going to go into everything. We do have an amazing staff, and that certainly is really important. But I also think that one of the things that is unique and special about Northbrook is the work that we've been doing around equity, diversity, and inclusion. I know a lot of libraries are working on this, but we have really been diving in not only on the staff side, but also providing programming for patrons.
Okay. So as we said, all libraries are going to have their own messaging. Kate, what are some issues specific to your library?
Northbrook is on the, if you're not familiar with where geographically we are in the state, we're on the north side of Chicago. We're a northern suburb, and we're mostly white and affluent. And so our village as a whole is struggling with creating a more inclusive community and learning how to be better at inviting people with different perspectives and identities to the table. Our community has a very high degree of people that have college degrees and master's degrees. And while that is wonderful, it also can exclude people that have gained knowledge and experience through non-traditional means. That's definitely, I think, one of the biggest issues we as a library are wrestling with in our community.
Okay. And how's the library making a difference in your community?
So we really feel that it is up to us to not just reflect the community that that people are a part of, but also expose people that are coming to library programs, that are checking out library materials, that are taking, and using our services, to give them an opportunity to gain a wider perspective of the world around us and the people that inhabit that world. So we provide information and opportunities, or at least this is what we try to, for reflection for those who are maybe have a higher level of privilege, or maybe have not as wide an understanding of the different people that make up the world that we live in.
Okay, great. So we are in our 20th, 21st month of the pandemic. I don't know.
The
I
10th
lost
year, it feels like.
forever. So talk about the ways that Northbrook stepped up to serve the community during the pandemic.
So this has been, as it has for all of us, I think, no matter what type of library, public school, academic, special, we have all had to figure out how to navigate this new world that we now find ourselves in. So we have constantly pivoted over the last however many months it actually is. We sought lots of feedback from our community. We did what a lot of people did. We moved programs online. We started offering curbside pickup. We ramped up our homebound service. We created a place for people that were maybe feeling isolated so that they could call. We switched all of our phones to remote pretty quickly so that patrons could call and talk to someone, not just email. And while we have slowly ramped back up, we're certainly not 100% there yet. And so we continue to pivot based on what our communities need.
Okay, great. And how will your library help drive the recovery?
I'm really fortunate because one of the things that is so great about Northbrook is that we have really strong units of local government that work together. And so we created, Glenview and Northbrook created a joint task force that allowed us to come together to educate the community, to help each other. And one of the things that we've really done is we've done vaccine clinics. We just had one last week for 5 to 11-year-olds because yay, they can now be vaccinated. We're doing some patron programming on, you know, why vaccination is important, helping people that are maybe vaccine hesitant to understand. We also have created more kind of mental and emotional health programs, recognizing that we've all experienced trauma over this last time. And so helping ourselves as well as our patrons recover from that, even knowing that we're not all the way out, but continuing to do that. And that is what we will continue to do to help drive recovery, is being that place where our patrons can come, where they can get that knowledge and those resources and know that they're in a safe space where they can be vulnerable.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so looking beyond the pandemic, whenever that
Yay!
time in the future is, what are your goals and plans for the library?
Well, I've already mentioned that EDI has become a really, equity, diversity, and inclusion has become a really huge focus for us. So that is going to continue beyond the pandemic. We know that there's a lot of work there we need to do. But we also are partnering, the village just passed a climate action plan. We know that climate change is a major issue in our world right now. And so the village has asked all of their other units of local government to partner, and we will be doing that to work on how we as a library can have more sustainable practices, as well as how we can help educate our community on the need for more sustainable, building, how to create, like we want to be a monarch way station so that we can help the monarchs. We want to make sure that we have plants that will help with pollinators. So focusing on those climate action plan metrics that the village has set up, but applying them here in the library.
So with all of these plans that you have in progress and are thinking about, do any of these involve adding any type of services or open hours?
We're very fortunate. We're already open 69 hours a week, but we do know that there might be some additional services we add. We don't know exactly what that will look like, but that's one of the things that we recognize is so critical. It isn't just saying like, oh, we know exactly what this is looking like. We know that we're going to have to, as we work on our EDI and capital improvement, climate action plan stuff, that we are going to have to provide new stuff. We don't yet know what that is, but we know that there will be new things coming.
That's wonderful. Going back to the Capitol, is your facility in good shape? Are you looking to expand or renovate?
So every year we do renovations, and the pandemic has definitely made us look at what we have planned for the next few years to see if we need to change what we're offering now that people's needs have changed so much. Like, do we still have a lot of manipulatives out in our early childhood area? What are we going to do in terms of creating more technology-focused spaces for people that are maybe working from home but want to get out of their house and work at the library? So we're, yes, we will be looking to expand and renovate, and are exploring what exactly that means right now.
Wonderful. So you've talked about a lot of amazing things, your climate action plan, your EDI initiative. So in a sentence or two, how will these plans make a difference for the Northbrook community?
Well, I always tell my staff that our job is to find out what the community needs and provide that to them. They're giving us money as a public library to provide them services. But I also feel that we as library professionals have a responsibility to educate our communities on the major issues impacting our world, and that we as a library should not only be educating our patrons, but we need to walk the walk and make sure that we are implementing what we are telling patrons is important as well. So that we think is how we will make a difference in our community and hopefully move us forward into a more sustainable and inclusive world.
Wonderful. Okay, so look how easy that was. Just using these bullet points and talking points, Kate was able to lay the foundation for the building blocks of her library's narrative. So as you're building your narrative, you need to collect data and have data interwoven into that narrative.
I love data. I love data so much, Joanna. I can't even tell you. I mean, I could talk about it for hours. But again, we're not going to do that because we only have an hour today. And so I think it's really important to note, though, data is so much more than just numbers on a spreadsheet, although that can be beautiful. If you use both quantitative and qualitative data, you can really shape how people see the library. Now, some people are not like me. Some people are not lovers of data, and that's totally cool. Whether you love data or not, though, we all have to collect some. Data for our boards, for superintendents or principals, for deans or college presidents, for other reporting agencies like the Illinois State Library or the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So these are things that everyone is already collecting. And so collecting data once and then using it in various ways makes it much easier to create clear, consistent messaging and also cut down on the amount of work it takes to collect data. And so one of the things that we do at Northbrook is every month we have data that we collect and we just put it into a spreadsheet. We use that for our board. Then they get that. That also goes into our Illinois Public Library annual report that we have to do. I also use that when I'm speaking with elected officials. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And every department participates in collecting that data. And right now I'm just talking about numbers. We're going to talk about other types of data in a little bit, but just numbers. And that way it isn't like a big onerous task of being like, oh, we have to figure out how many people came to the library last year. Well, if you're tracking every month, you're not only able to collect the data, but you're able to see trends, which helps you as well. So that's what we do at Northbrook. What about Park Ridge? What do you guys do there, Joanna?
So as I'm newer, we're just kind of getting into rebuilding our data stat sheet, but similar to Northbrook, we calculate our data in a master Excel document. So keeping, as Kate said, all those pieces of information that we need for IPLAR and for other reporting. But in our monthly report and in my board report narrative, I do try to call out special attention to our monthly outreach activity. In Park Ridge, we support over 80 local book groups and 8 schools in the community. So our librarians are doing lots of community outreach. And that's not necessarily something that we report to IPLAR, but that is something crucial for telling our story at the local level and demonstrating how valuable the library is in community partnerships.
I mean, 80 book groups and
Yes.
8 schools. I mean, that's thousands of people every year. And what a powerful number. And we're going to tell you guys in a little bit how to pair those numbers with stories, but that's a great one that really shows what the library is bringing to the community. So yeah, quantitative data can be really valuable, but it does need to be paired with stories in order to be most effective. Most people are not like me. Most people don't love just hearing a bunch of numbers. So collecting data that gives a number, but also shows your library's impact is going to resonate the most with whatever stakeholders you're talking to.
Okay, so we're talking about your library's stories and how that shows impact. So when I first joined the ILA Advocacy Committee in offered to do this presentation with Kate, I was really nervous. I couldn't think off the top of my head of any stories to show impact. I've just kind of been chugging along in my career all these years and was kind of thinking, gosh, how have I added value? But I think coming back to the things that we do every day in small ways are meaningful and they have impact on the patrons and the public that we serve. Kate, do you have a good story? You have many years under your belt as library director and librarian. Can you recall a story to help kind of trigger that, how your library has had impact in a small way?
I actually have a recent one that just happened. So I don't often get to work on the public service desk, but I do fill in from time to time so that I don't lose all of my librarian skills now that I've been a director for over a decade. And so I was working on the reference desk a few weeks ago, and a patron comes in and she says, I need help. I need to scan and email these documents to someone. And I've used your thing before, but I don't think I can do it on my own. And I said, sure, I'm happy to help. So we have TBS's Easy Scan station, which is actually very, very easy. It lives up to its name. And so we walked over there and she's like, can I just try it on my own? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna just stand here. I'm here if you need me to, but yeah, go for it. So it takes her through all the prompts. She successfully scans and then emails it to everyone she needs to email these documents to. And she turns to me and she goes, I did it. And I'm like, you did. I said, I'm happy to be a cheerleader here to tell you what an amazing job you did. You did not need me at all. And she's like, no, but I really appreciate you being here. And I would not have been able to do this if your staff here, if the staff here wasn't so wonderful in the past. They never make me feel foolish for not knowing how to use technology. Technology is something that scares me, but I feel so comfortable coming in here and trying. Even if I know if I don't get it, it's okay, because I know the staff will help me and they won't make me feel like I should have known it or like I'm stupid for not knowing something. She's like, I just love this library so much. And so I literally walked probably about 20 steps with her and then stood there. I did nothing. But what we created at the library was a place where she felt safe learning and acknowledging that technology was something that was a little scary for her. And that's just like, that's one person. We typically, in the before times, had about 1,200 people a day. So one person, one time, and that had such a huge impact on her life. And I think we all have those stories. I mean, Joanna, what about you? Do you have a
I
small
do. I actually
story that is actually really powerful?
Really powerful. So just as Kate and I were preparing for this presentation last week, one of the reference librarians out on the desk called me and introduced me to a patron who wanted to thank myself and thank the library staff for helping him find a job. He had been job searching for the last 6 months using the library's computers. And not only did he find a job, he brought in his first pay stub to show the librarians and to show me, and also that he was going to, share with his friends who are also job seekers to come into the library. The staff have been so helpful in helping him find his job search. He had other interviews lined up. So really that was just made my whole week and my whole month. And I think that demonstrates that now we have a library advocate in our patron. He's going to go out and talk to his friends who are in similar situations and bring them into the library so that we can help them and kind of have that impact increase tenfold, hopefully.
Wow, that is such a powerful story. I love that.
Yeah. So Kate and I have shared some really great stories, but for all of you on the other side of the Zoom screen are probably wondering how to construct these short stories and then to share impact.
Yeah. So Joanna, I was really struck when you said you didn't think you had any stories to share, but of course, as we just pointed out, everyone has stories, and it can be a little intimidating to think about how to craft a story. So I think it would be helpful to show people that it can be pretty easy. Are you willing to help me show them with
Let's do it.
We'll go through our exercise. So first, we need a problem. So we have to define like kind of what the issue is that we're trying to address.
Yeah, so I think right now, as Kate said at Northbrook, and I think library wide and in the national conversation, we're all talking about equity, diversity, and inclusivity. So we all serve patrons of color who need to see themselves reflected in books. We know that is not always the case. Our major publishers do not often do the best job of promoting equity, diversity and inclusivity in their offerings. So that's our problem, Kate.
That's unfortunately a really good one. So what would a library intervention be?
Yeah, so I think starting with our selectors, going to smaller publishers, kind of going off the beaten path to try to find those titles that really speak to a wider range of our populations. Also to promote those materials by having inclusive displays, and not just during the months where we're honoring specific groups, but really making sure that diverse faces are woven into everything that we're putting forward in our displays. You never know. Even as Kate said, in Northbrook and certainly in Park Ridge, we have similar demographics, mostly white faces here. So having those stories out, you never know who's going to walk into your library and see that and resonate with it. So kind of giving folks also the windows and mirrors, giving people, offering an alternate perspective, an experience outside of their own.
I love that. Okay, so a happy ending. What would a happy ending be with this type of problem?
Yeah, so I think the happy ending is that person that comes in and maybe coming into a community like ours, maybe feels out of place, or they don't see others like themselves, and that they come into the library and that they see themselves face front on display. I think that affirms what libraries do, and also gives that person an opportunity to feel the inclusion and the warmth that libraries provide.
So we talked about how important it is, how important stories are, but how also helpful it can be to pair it with data. So what about a fact? What would be a fact that we could pair with this?
Yep. So I think kind of speaking to the publishing issue. So 37% of the population consists of people of color, but only a quarter of the books published feature children of color. So really making sure using that data to say, that we want to make sure that we're tapping into those sources to get as much material as we can possible on our shelves to represent diverse voices.
Yes, that is something that we continue to work on, and is definitely a message worth repeating. So to just make it more personal, what about a real person that this might have impacted in our communities?
Yeah, so I think definitely a child, maybe a person of color, a child of color who's maybe, one of 20 in their school classroom, coming into the library, coming into our youth services departments and seeing these books again, face out, predominant, and to see a wide variety, to give them the opportunity to feel that inclusivity in the library. And also, again, windows and mirrors. Want to make sure that we provide people materials that reflect their own experience, but also open their eyes to the experiences of others. That makes our library richer, that makes our community richer, and is a benefit for everybody.
All right, so now tying it all together, I always find that this can be the most challenging one to do. I can come up with stories all day long, but what is a phrase that pays with this story?
Yeah, so I was tossing around, come to the library and find yourself and learn about others.
I love that. Yes, that is fantastic. And so building stories can be really fun. And as you can see, I mean, we just did that in a couple minutes. You could do this with a sheet of paper yourself, or talking about it with others in your library to put together your own stories and the impact that you are making in your communities. But of course, if we're building all of these stories, where are we putting them? Because that's the thing. You can collect them, but if you don't have an easy way to gather them and use them, then it kind of doesn't matter. So capturing the stories is so important. So one of the things that we did at Northbrook a few years ago, when we were trying to put together kind of a patron story database, if you will, is that we did a Love Your Library Month campaign. Now, a lot of libraries have done this. We did it as part of September, which is National Library Card Sign Up Month. We asked people to fill out online forms. We had forms in the library. This was in the before times where people would fill stuff out. We had staff writing down things that patrons shared with them. And so we put all of those into one database that we could then tap into and use. Again, collecting things once and then using them 5, 10, 15 times. And so we do this in a couple different ways at Northbrook. We take some of those stories as well as the stories we now regularly get, and we post them on social media. We have a newsletter that goes out 6 times a year. We'll sometimes take a comment that someone has given us and go and write a story about the impact the library has had on their life. We share all of our patron comments that we receive with our board in our monthly board packet, which we post on our website so that everyone in the community can read what people are liking and occasionally not liking about the library. And then we also can use these to highlight for the local papers, sending out press releases or ideas for articles for them to highlight things in the library. There's a great story that happened right before the pandemic. We do a winter reading program every year, and we had our winner in 2019 was a 100-year-old woman who had recently moved here from the East Coast, and she won a Kindle. She was so excited, and she wrote us this beautiful thank you note, and she talked about how much she hated living here, and we were like, oh, okay. So she had been living by herself, and her daughter said that that was no longer safe. So her daughter moved her out here to live with her daughter and her daughter's children and grandchildren. She did not want to be here. She did not have a network here, but she did love to read. And so she started coming to the library, and she told us that the only thing, which is kind of sad because Northbrook does have other good stuff, but the only thing that she liked about living here was coming to the library, and that made her happy. And so when we learned this, we were like, oh my gosh, like what a powerful story, the impact that we have had on her life and the fact that she now has won our winter reading program. So we reached out to her and asked if we could do a slightly larger story than we usually do for winter reading. And she was like, yes. And then we found out that she keeps a notebook of all of the stories, all of the books that she reads. And so we published some of her recommendations, and patrons were like, we want more. And so we ended up creating a special book list and doing a book display and showing all of the books that this person had read over the last couple years. It didn't, this wasn't a story that we then took to legislators or, used to get more funding. And those stories are very important. But what this story did was it showed the community that we are here for everyone. And as a result, we started hearing from other seniors like, oh, this is how the library has impacted my life. And we're able to share those then when we talk about different things with our village board, with our library board, with our legislators, to show that, yes, we aren't just transactional checking books in and out, that we're impacting people's lives. And that is really what it's all about, right? Advocacy at the core is about talking about how are you impacting people's lives? How is the library helping their community? And so these are some of the other ways that you can do that too. You can capture them yourself. A lot of times if you encourage patrons, you'll get great stories from them. And photos also tell a really strong story. We had a picture of our winter reading club winner with her display that we posted on social media. And not only did people love it and want it and checked out a ton of the books, but she loved it. She felt now like she was part of the community, which is, that's all you can ask for, right? So we've covered a lot already. We've talked about how to do all of this work, but we need to also think about who should be doing this work. And we've kind of touched on that, but I think we should dive a little bit more into that.
Yep. So everyone, tuning in today, just remember the best advocates for change are those who can tell a story that moves people to action. And you are very likely that person, or you are a person who can identify other people from your library. You know these stories the best. So I empower you today, during the session or afterwards, this evening, tomorrow, next week, write down one story, one moment of impact, something that's stuck out in your mind. The patron that you helped find a job or use the scanner, those kinds of things. Those are meaningful and have impact. As Kate said, you can collect these stories once and you can use them a lot of different ways. You can report out monthly to your board. You can share them with staff. You can share them with the community. You can share with legislators. You're already advocating all the time. You're probably doing these things and you're just not realizing it. So start whatever's easy for you. If it's like Kate's winter reading winner and writing them down in a notebook, or keeping a database of all these stories, start collecting them. Chances are you already have them, and you just need to have them so that when you need them in the future, you can easily grab them and share those stories out. So now that we've talked about collecting stories and the data that you're already collecting and using, what do we do with them?
What a great question. So yeah, because we don't want to just collect for collecting's sake. In order to advocate successfully, you do need to put a little bit of thought into it and create a plan. So an advocacy plan is defined in two ways. One, it's a detailed proposal for doing or achieving something. And two, it's an intention or decision about what we are going to do. So just like with any project that you work on, you need to determine what your goals are and what the key issues you're going to address are, but you also want to keep it simple. This doesn't have to be a 50-page plan. You want to stick to a few key goals and focus areas. You need to define who your audience is in order to develop talking points that really resonate with that audience. So sometimes, who your audience is, you might use one story and use it in a lot of different ways with different audiences. So your message might change a little bit depending on who the audience is. So once you know, though, what you're going to say, who you're going to say it to, and how you're going to say it, you need to decide where exactly are you going to communicate this message and who is going to deliver it. Finally, you need to know that you're not doing this work alone. So who can you bring on board to help with spreading the message? It doesn't have to just fall on the director's shoulder or the board's shoulder or the dean of the library. If you share it, it makes it much easier if you're all doing a little bit of the work, right? And so this is something that you'll often see ILA doing when they send a call out to everyone asking for help in supporting or opposing a bill in the state or federal legislature. And so again, you can call out who's your community that you can call on for help. Maybe it's other elected officials, maybe it's other staff members, maybe it's other libraries. It's going to depend on what the message is, who that network is going to be. So here's a really simple example of what a plan might sound like. So oftentimes we focus on there being funding issues in libraries, right? No matter what kind of library you are, we probably don't all have all of the money that we would like to have in order to serve our communities. So we're going to say that our goal is to get an increase in funding for our library. And so our audience is going to be, depending on the type of library, it's going to be your community, which might be students or parents or your actual, residents if you're a public library. The government, so it might be your city or village government. It might be, your college administration. It might be a superintendent or a school board. And then your legislators. So that can be at the state level, right, with our state legislators, as well as at the federal level. Then you want to develop your talking points. You can talk about, COVID has really made it difficult for us to be able to provide the services we need. We need to up our technology budget, and we don't have the resources to do that. We also are struggling with the CPI increase, which for this year is estimated at 6%, not estimated, it's now finalized at 6%. So we need to be paying our staff, or otherwise we're going to be seeing them leave. So these are the things that are preventing us from giving everything we want to our community. Then you need to communicate it. So in this case, you might go to outreach events. You might put things on social media, on your website, in newsletters. Do remember that with certain things, like if you are going for a referendum, there are laws that you do need to follow about how you advocate and how you put that message out. But if you're just telling people about what you need, that is something that you can do in all of these different ways. And then who exactly is going to deliver this message? It shouldn't be just one person. It should be everyone that is potentially impacted. So everyone that works in your library, your board, perhaps if you are a public library, and potentially people in your community, they can help. And then in terms of building your network, who are your key advocates to help you with your messaging? Well, probably you're not the only person dealing with this, right? Many of us have been hit hard by COVID, especially around technology and staffing. And so having other libraries that are also sharing what they're doing and helping send the message. If you have people in your community that are huge library advocates, maybe it's your friends of the library, maybe it's another group that really want to get out and talk about how critical it is to increase library funding. And so that's it. That's all that you only took a couple minutes to put all of that together in terms of putting a one goal plan together. But once you have that plan, you should share it. Share it with everyone in your organization so that they can help amplify that message. And in addition to creating a plan for the library, you can also develop your own personal advocacy plan. Perhaps you have never talked to an elected official before. I know the first time I did it, I was terrified. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I guess I didn't realize that they are just people too, but they are. And so maybe your personal advocacy plan is reaching out to one of your elected officials and just asking if they'd like a tour of the library. And perhaps you haven't ever collected a story like we were talking about today. So maybe your personal advocacy plan goal is to capture one story every month. Set the bar low, right? It's like working out. You don't want to say like, I'm going to work out for an hour, 7 days a week. Start by saying, I'm going to work out for half an hour, 3 days a week. Set the goal low so you can get success and then build on it. Whatever the plan is that you decide for your advocacy plan and your personal advocacy plan, you need to ask yourself what steps you want to take to advocate successfully and to be a successful advocate yourself. Remember, becoming a more effective advocate, it is just like eating an elephant, which hopefully none of us ever have to do, but you can succeed if you do it just one bite at a time. So now your stories are collected, your plan is in place. It is now time to go out and advocate.
Thank you,
I'm
Kate.
ready.
That's
Are you ready,
awesome.
Joanna? I feel like I'm ready.
I'm ready. And next week, Nanette and Gail are going to be here to give us the tools to create everyday advocacy goals to be able to put our plan into action using all the good things that Kate and I have talked about, our data, our stories, and how that all ties together in our third module. So even after next week's presentation, if you still need support, remember that you're not alone. You can be working with certainly your colleagues in your library, your school boards, your library boards, your colleagues at other libraries, but we also have the wonderful folks at ALA, our advocacy committee team, the American Library Association, RAILS, Illinois Heartland, the State Library, Carly, fantastic at being good sharers of information and sharing best practices and support. So you remember that you're not alone in this. It is a journey, one step at a time, as Kate said. In the meantime, you can visit ILA's advocacy page and download the toolkit and get started. Our first session is already archived on that site. This session will be archived very shortly. And then next week, Gail and Nanette will bring us home.